I've just come back to the hotel that I'm staying in, which is in the center of Kyiv, very close to the foreign ministry, not far away from the parliament. And I had been to a district on the outskirts where a Russian missile landed yesterday on a residential block in the afternoon, injuring 8 but killing no one, astonishingly, because the damage was quite extensive. And we got these extraordinary pictures of a babushka, of a grandmother, on the 4th floor, standing on the balcony that looked, as if it was about to collapse, under a chandelier that had kind of somehow survived this attack, clearing out the rubble, oblivious to the danger that she was facing, not really keen to talk to us at all. So, I don't know why they were targeting that particular block. There's a suggestion it might have been as something stray during the fight for the airport that's not too far from there. And then on the way back into the center of the city, there were reports of Russian paratroopers having landed in and around the Ukrainian parliament complex, which is about half a mile from where I'm talking to you now. We've not seen any evidence of that. To be honest, the troops on the ground, the Ukrainian ones, are so twitchy.
Yes.
There's much more evidence of them on the streets today than yesterday. Colleagues of mine got pinned down by one platoon who were worried there might be kind of Russian infiltrators. I mean, everyone is triggered, everyone is nervous, and we're trying to be as careful as possible. So I can't confirm to you what's happening in the parliament. But we've always thought, James, that one of the strategies employed by the Russians and the intelligence services in the West, who've actually been remarkably accurate on all of this so far, have agreed with this, which is to basically see some of the key institutions and the key leadership characters in the government. And then, if they don't give up, which they're obviously not going to do, and then basically put in someone who's more amenable to Moscow.
You've covered a lot of events over the years. How successful a playbook is that historically? The idea that you simply grab the reins of power and replace the people holding them with your own puppets and hope that the population will, through fear or something else, simply go along with it.
Well, it's not very successful, and they should know that because they've tried this before, although without a massive army doing it for them. I mean, in the short term, they might be able to remove President Zelensky and the other people around him, and indeed some of the other people who might want to take over from President Zelensky, like the previous President Poroshenko, who spoke to on LBC at length exclusively last week, who's also in hiding, by the way.
Yes.
But remember, this all started in 2014 with tens of thousands of Ukrainians, a lot of them young Ukrainians, from the metropolitan center, Kyiv, saying to Moscow, we don't want you to interfere in our affairs. We don't want the president, Yanukovych was his name at the time, who is closer to Moscow than he is to the West. What we want is to be part of the European experience. I've never seen as many EU flags, James, as in that square at that time. While we were having the beginnings of our Brexit debate, this lot here were saying, you know what? We want to be part of the European Union. That's where we see our home. Now imagine they put in a puppet into the presidential palace here. I mean, within weeks, they would have demonstrations on the streets, much bigger than anything in Moscow or St. Petersburg. And they would have to decide, we're either going to kill all these people or lock them up, or we're going to give in to them.
It would be the same dilemma as 2014, when the sheer weight of protest overcame the government. But they would...
and also these people, remember, these people have had the experience of independence and sovereignty and, democracy, albeit somewhat flawed, like quite a few democracies, but they've had the expression of their free will for long enough for it to become a part of their societal DNA. They will not give that up very easily. So I think the idea that you can just put in a puppet regime and run the place like Belarus is being run at the moment by President Lukashenko, who is an incumbent who's been there for decades, I think is pie in the sky.
Although it doesn't prevent it from being the plan, just the plausibility of the plan working.
There is remember, he has there's a plan from God here as far as Putin is concerned. I mean, he's doing the work of his maker as far as he thinks in terms of recreating or trying to recreate Greater Russia.
Is there an argument already, as Patrick Coburn argues today in the newspaper, that Putin has made a historic mistake?
Well, we don't know that. It's possible. When you see the demonstrations in St. Petersburg yesterday, when you remember the fact that a few years ago there were mass demonstrations across the country because Putin had decided to lock up the very popular governor, of a Siberian province. When you see that, you realize that despite the sort of relative compliance of the Russian population, despite the fact that the media is controlled by the Kremlin, there are many, many people there who say, you know what, we don't want this. That's why the government's paranoid, because they know that the infectious virus of democracy, of liberty, has a ready host in a large part of the Russian population. So this is all about self-preservation for the Kremlin and this very small group of people. I mean, the hope for the West, which they didn't express publicly, but I guess that's the hope, is that eventually some people in the inner coterie of Putin's court circle, will say, listen, mate, Natasha's had to leave her flat in Knightsbridge. She can't go shopping in Harrods anymore. The cars have been frozen. Little Ivan's been kicked out of Eton. The house in Verbier is gone. Life is crap. You've got to bring this home. What do you think you're doing, Vladimir? And he doesn't really care, what this guy says. But if enough of them say that, he might care.
That's fascinating. You've preempted the question that I'm sort of working around on the program, the first hour of the program this morning, because it will sound to many people listening, Matt, and I won't detain you much longer, it will sound slightly unlikely that pressure being brought to bear in those sorts of areas could turn out to be crucial, but it's a very real and present possibility.
Well, but only to the inner circle.
Yes,
and remember,
precisely.
Putin has already said goodbye to all those people after 2014 and those sanctions. It's the 4 people around him who are very, very tight with him that could exert pressure. And those 4 people were terrified to talk to the boss in that extraordinary meeting last week in the Security Council.
Yes, they were.
Kept at a 20-yard, social distance.
Yeah. And do we know that they have links to London, those 4?
Well, they personally, I don't think do. I think those links have been shut down a long time ago, but their relatives might.
Everybody else.
Their wider family might. I honestly think that sanctions as a tool to dissuade him from doing something just don't work.
No.
Whether they're sector sanctions, so oil sector, or even banking sanctions or individual sanctions, the only thing that you might do at the end is persuade someone close to him to basically say the game's over. But we're a long way from that as far as I can tell.
And it's going to be an ugly path, a horrible path.